Welcome to Perfectionists Anonymous, a podcast-style channel dedicated to unraveling the myth of perfectionist living. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I invite you to sit down, relax, and hang out with me, your supportive friend, who knows how difficult perfectionism can be and who wants to find a better way. Thank you for joining me today. Just when you feel you have no time to relax, know that this is the moment you most need to make time to relax. Matt Haig, Reasons to Stay Alive. Greetings, fellow perfectionists. I hope you are all doing well. After last week's heavy episode, I wanted to do a more lighthearted episode, focusing on how us perfectionists can take care of ourselves. Because, let's face it, perfectionists and people pleasers really are not great at taking care of themselves. More often than not, our focus shifts to what we should be doing, what other people want us to do, or what other people need. Rarely does the focus move inward. Rarely do we allow ourselves that time to really sit and think what we need, and that it's unequivocally okay to take time for that. Self-care is an interesting topic. On the surface, self-care is marketed with things like manicures, bath bombs, or long naps. Don't get me wrong, I'm down for all three of these things. But self-care is something that can and really needs to go so much deeper. During a personality types training, I learned the concept that there are 5 different kinds of self-care, and that certain personalities are naturally able to participate in some while really struggling to engage in others. I'm going to cover each of these 5, but first a couple important notes. First, us perfectionists have a tendency to take even things that are meant to be good and helpful for us and turn them into just another thing with rules, just another thing to control, and just another thing that we need to do perfectly. Self-care is meant to be an act of unconditional self-love that you give to yourself and use to identify and meet your needs. But a lot of perfectionists take this idea and make it a regimen. For example, we've probably all heard the rule that you're supposed to drink 8 8-ounce glasses of water every day. Staying hydrated is a healthy form of self-care that you can give to your body, but perfectionists are quite likely to have a water tracker, keep track of how much water they drink, and then feel some amount of guilt if they don't get in their 8 glasses each day. And they shame themselves. Raise your hand if you've ever done this. I'm raising my hand. When this happens, the act of self-care is no longer loving towards yourself. It's just yet another way that you're falling short. Same thing happens with movement, or food, or sleep, or screen time, or so many other things. We set these arbitrary rules for ourselves that we must follow in order to be the best at self-care, so then we can be our best selves, but that defeats the purpose. If you notice yourself using should, creating rules around your self-care, or telling yourself that you didn't do the self-care thing well enough, that's a red flag that you're using self-care for a contradictory purpose. You aren't using it to care for yourself. You're using it as another way to control yourself. And another caveat, the conversation around self-care often feels very privileged, like you need a certain amount of time, money, and resources in order to participate. Part of this comes down to the very expensive kinds of self-care that we see marketed, like spa days and gifting yourself something fancy, things that do actually require quite a bit of money and time. Self-care doesn't have to be that, and I'm going to really try and focus on accessible and attainable forms of self-care in this episode. I also want to acknowledge that some people are really struggling to get their basic needs met. To have a home, to feel safe, to be fed, to keep a job, and that self-care conversations often leave these people out of the equation. I dream of a world where self-care truly can be equitable and something that everyone has the time to access. But that simply isn't the case right now, and I need to fully recognize the limitations of self-care as a concept. Now, let's talk about the 5 different kinds of self-care. mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and social. Mental self-care is the self-care that you do for your mind, things that are mentally stimulating and that keep your brain feeling energized. I do think that this kind of self-care is an area that perfectionists usually have a pretty good handle on because there's a heavy emphasis on learning. Perfectionists often use learning to help make sense of the world around them, which provides a sense of security as they develop their methods and morals. The more you know, the more you can do things the quote-unquote right way. This is where we, again, need to be careful. Are we using mental self-care to just create more rules for ourselves, or are we truly using it to create engaging, caring practices for our brains? For me, mental self-care comes in the form of listening to podcasts, reading books, playing video games, and completing puzzles. Video games and puzzles have always been fun for me because they are a low-stress way to engage my brain and explore stories in fun, unique ways. They provide a stakes-free challenge that allows me to feel successful and excited without having to worry about any repercussions. If I solve the puzzle or win the game, great. And if I don't, it's literally no big deal. There are countless free phone apps with different puzzle types, like classic Sudokus or crossword puzzles. And then there are physical puzzles as well, like jigsaw puzzles. Books provide a similar kind of mental escape while still giving my brain something to focus on. I'm a particularly big fan of mysteries and historical fiction, both of which feel like narrative puzzles and transport me to fantastical locations outside of my current reality. Finally, I listen to podcasts on topics that inspire me or help me learn about an area of interest. I listen to them while driving to and from work, while making dinner, and while doing chores around the house. All of these are either free or relatively low cost, except perhaps the video games, though that does depend more on which video games you are purchasing. I also highly recommend secondhand bookstores like Half Price Books, which have a lot of books, puzzles, games, and movies all at reduced, more accessible costs. Local libraries are also a great option. Other forms of mental self-care might include writing or journaling, visiting a mentally stimulating location like a museum or library, learning a new skill, or creating art. Essentially, any low-stress activity that engages your brain can be an excellent form of mental self-care. If you feel like mental self-care is lacking in your life and you'd like more of it, I'd encourage you to find an activity or hobby that is fun for you, one that doesn't create added stress or pressure in your life. There's so much pressure for our hobbies to become side hustles or for our creations to always be something that we sell or create for a specific purpose. So I think it's important for the intention behind the skill or hobby to be one of relaxation and personal worth, not necessarily just another thing that we feel like we have to do. Physical self-care is the self-care that you do for your body, the things that nourish your body and help your body feel good and whole. I think this is another area that perfectionists are more likely to already be paying attention to. But I also think it's the area that is most likely to be corrupted by perfectionistic thinking, rules, and regimens. A lot of this comes from so much of our societal messaging being obsessed with health and all of the right and wrong ways to do health. There is so much should messaging in the health and wellness worlds with very little nuance or individualization. So proceed with caution in this area in particular. Physical self-care is supposed to make you and your body feel good. If it is causing pain, stress, feelings of shame or guilt, or if you're working with unrealistic expectations, then you may not actually be caring for your body. For me, physical self-care comes in the form of walks around my neighborhood, hiking at my local parks, staying hydrated, eating nourishing foods that make my body feel good, doing yoga, and prioritizing my sleep. When I can, I also love other kinds of physical self-care that get my body moving outside, like paddleboarding, kayaking, or rock climbing, but those opportunities happen less frequently. All of these options are free or have low upfront costs. I really love walking and hiking because they make my body feel good. For some, running is an excellent form of self-care and a great option. But for me, I never felt good after a run and put so much pressure on myself, which is a sign that I wasn't using it for self-care. So now I allow myself to walk and hike, and I'm so much happier. I also do yoga regularly. Stretching my body and practicing balance feels really good for me. It removes so much of the tightness that I naturally carry in my body and helps me connect to my body in a more loving and kind way. Water and sleep are things that I get when I can, and I make sure that they're a priority. I don't shame myself when I don't get quote-unquote enough, but I also know that I like how sufficient water and sleep make my body feel, so I just do my best. The same goes for food. I eat foods that give my body energy, that taste delicious, that make me happy, and that nourish me throughout the day. Other forms of physical self-care can involve any other form of movement or exercise that makes you feel good. Running, biking, dancing, weightlifting, swimming, and so on. I just want to stress that no form of movement or exercise is superior to another. What works for you and what you genuinely like is the best form of movement. If you like it, you'll do it. If you feel like you're supposed to do it, it won't be sustainable for you, and that helps no one. Additionally, physical self-care can include the little things that care for your body, like using lotion on dry skin, taking a warm shower, having someone give you a massage, professional or simply from a loved one, or taking a nap. Ultimately, anything that moves your body, nourishes your body, or cares for your body without expectations or demands can be an excellent form of physical self-care. Spiritual self-care is the self-care that you do for your soul. This is a pretty deep kind of self-care that hits at the human experience. Humans are gifted with a questioning mind and a seeking experience. We have a lot of questions, and it's kind of our thing to wonder where we came from, why we're here, and what it all means anyway. We all go about answering these questions in different ways, but thinking and processing through some of these things is actually an incredibly important form of self-care. Taking the time to have a form of spiritual self-care is what helps us experience the positive moments in life at their fullest and what helps us cope through the most difficult moments in life. It helps us find meaning. When people hear the word spiritual, I think most of us immediately associate it with the words spirituality and religion. For many, these are incredibly important outlets of spiritual self-care. At their core, religious and spiritual movements are about bringing together a community of like-minded people who share similar beliefs and therefore experience a sense of belonging as they seek answers. Within these communities, people may feel safe to explore philosophical ideas, discuss big, important concepts like death or afterlife, and foster deep social connections outside of their own personal social circles. While this form of spiritual self-care can be important to many, it's not the only option. Spiritual self-care can be sought in a variety of places outside of religion or other spiritual circles. For me, most of my spiritual self-care comes through connecting with nature. Experiences outside, taking in the beauty of a flowing river, watching the leaves fall from the trees, looking for shapes in the clouds, admiring the intricacy of bark on a tree, feeling the grass between my toes, enjoying the first falling snowflakes of the winter season. All of these things remind me of the beauty and grace of nature and help me find some peace in this world. As someone constantly seeking perfection, there's no better place to remind me that imperfection is actually what's beautiful, because I can see it coming together in the most glorious ways all around me when I step outside. I also really appreciate meditation and self-reflection work as spiritual self-care. I have to be careful with these because it's very easy to should myself into meditating more than I am, and very easy to use self-reflection as a disguise for always self-improving. Regardless, these two methods of sitting with my thoughts, being in the present, taking a moment for myself, breathing deeply, and reflecting on my goals, my dreams, my purpose, my place, my worth, it's incredibly important to take those moments to reconnect with your soul and see what it's trying to tell you. I know that probably sounds really kooky and manifesty, and at the same time, it's these kinds of thoughts that make us human. Neglecting these thoughts doesn't make us more pragmatic or analytic. It just kind of pulls us out of some of the most pressing and meaningful parts of humanity. What are our lives for? Why are they worth living? These are questions that we all need to answer for ourselves and then ask ourselves how we're living accordingly. Remember, though, it's not a shame game. It's not a comparison game. Self-reflection for the purpose of finding grace and meaning is a connective experience. Self-reflection for the sake of bettering yourself so that you're better than others or comparing your life to others who do it differently is a separating experience. So when it comes down to it, spiritual self-care is all about finding connection, finding meaning, exploring answers, and finding peace. Everyone is going to have different versions of this and different ways of getting there. And regardless, it's an area of self-care that can bring a lot of balance and tranquility to your life. Emotional self-care is self-care that you do for your heart. This kind of self-care allows for the meaningful, authentic expression of emotion, finding outlets for all of your emotions, and giving yourself the time and space to feel and process your emotions. I'll be honest with you all. I'm really bad at emotional self-care. If you listened to the Emotions mini-series, then you may know that perfectionists often have complicated relationships with emotions, particularly negative emotions, because of all of the messaging that we receive about quote-unquote appropriate emotional expression. There are so many stigmas and rules that I've internalized about emotions, and I've only now been able to confront those with some honesty. This may be the case for you too. As perfectionists, we hyper-focus on the right way to do things. Additionally, as people pleasers, which many of us also are, we hyper-focus on making sure that everyone else feels good, that everyone else is seen and heard, and that everyone else is taken care of. This happens at the expense of our own emotional health, constantly putting ourselves on the back burners and focusing outwards instead of in. For me, my only current outlet for emotional self-care is therapy. My 1-year therapy anniversary is coming up next week, and I'm so thankful to have a safe space where I can process through my anxiety, my anger, my sadness, and so many other things. Even if you don't think that you need therapy, I truly recommend it to everyone. Being a human is hard, and we all carry the weight of that burden. Even though I'm not an expert in practicing any of these myself, by any means, other forms of emotional self-care can include listening to a moody playlist, watching a movie that matches up with your current mood or experience, having a good cry, practicing self-validation of your emotions, speaking with a trusted person about your emotions, or spending time with animals. All of these practices can allow you to fully express your emotions without holding back, giving you the time and space that you need to work through them without needing to restrict them or shove them away. I think it's also important to add that emotional self-care at its core is not about emotional numbing. I add this note because I know that this is exactly what I have a tendency to do instead, and I know that some of you may be like me. I'm much more likely to binge watch something on Netflix and avoid my feelings than I am to really take a moment to feel what I'm actually feeling. I numb instead of addressing the root. And I'm not saying that those Netflix binges don't still need to happen sometimes. Especially for perfectionistic people pleasers, we're so used to being on the go, constantly doing, always improving, that sometimes just not doing anything is self-care in and of itself. That's still important too, and is honestly better than never taking a moment to just stop, lay down, and relax. And if we are taking care of ourselves in the first place through these different kinds of self-care, then we may not get to the point where all we can do is lay down and watch Netflix for 12 hours. That may sound contradictory, and like I think one form of self-care is better than the other, but that's not my intent. My goal is to help myself and any other perfectionist people pleasers see that self-care can be a regular part of our lives, not a last resort crash and burn. Taking time for emotional self-care can really help with this. And if you still want to numb your emotions sometimes, I say go for it. Just know why you're doing it and give yourself full permission. Finally, social self-care is the self-care that you do to foster your connections with other humans, because we are an incredibly connective species that requires human contact, love, and belonging to feel safe and whole. Social self-care comes in the form of any kind of social experience that is meaningful and fulfilling for you. Happy hour with your coworkers, meeting a friend for coffee to catch up, having dinner with your parents, engaging in traditional holiday rituals, going on a date, throwing or attending a party, scheduling a game night, etc. Social self-care is another area that has historically been really difficult for me as a perfectionistic people pleaser, because I put so much pressure on myself to show up a certain way in any and all social scenarios. This meant that social situations were more of a stressor than a kind of self-care. It is becoming easier for me, though, as I've started to shed some of my perfectionistic layers. Because it is crucial to spend time with friends and family and your community, people that you feel you can be yourself around and people who love you. This is going to be easier said than done in some circles, and really finding your kind of people is what can turn socialization from something stressful into something fulfilling. Laughter, hugs, inside jokes, smiles, all of these things are so important and are most easily felt when you connect yourself with people who understand you and people who care for you. This does not mean that they are perfect or that they get you 100% of the time, but they're willing to listen and to be there. I would be so curious to hear in the comment section down below which areas of self-care you feel confident in and which ones you could use a little more of in your life. If you have any ideas for me on how I can bring more emotional and social self-care into my life, I'd love your advice as well. I'd like to reiterate that there isn't a right or a wrong way to do self-care. Someone who has mastered one form of self-care is no better than someone who has a solid balance of all five, is no better than someone who is still learning that all five kinds of self-care have some value for their life. We are all doing the best we can with what we have right now, and that is okay. Wherever you're at is perfectly imperfect, and I love that for you. Please don't feel pressured to force certain kinds of self-care into your life that won't work for you. Please don't feel pressured to rush into improving your self-care in one of the areas that you feel are lacking. Please don't add more pressure into your life because it sounds like now I'm even saying that you're doing caring for yourself wrong. Please do know that you have permission to take care of yourself because you are worth it. Please do know that you are not selfish or greedy or lazy or silly or weak or any other negative connotation word if you prioritize self-care. Please do know that we each are given a short, undetermined amount of time on this earth, and that living it in a way that fosters happiness and meaning might serve you more than living it in a way that fosters restriction and deprivation at the cost of yourself. I opened today's episode with a quote from Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. Just when you feel you have no time to relax, know that this is the moment you most need to make time to relax. Listen to yourself, fellow perfectionists. Listen to what your mind, your heart, your soul, your body, and your need for connection are telling you. Thank you for listening today, fellow perfectionists. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more perfectionism-related content and to help the channel grow. If these episodes are resonating with you and you think they might resonate with others, please feel free to share it as well. Until next time, fellow perfectionists.